Hopefully we're live again now. I'll give it a couple seconds for stream delay. Okay, awesome. I think my internet had a fit. Because it tends to do that every now and then. Okay. Oops. Also, Thurballen, I just got a notification that you're hosting me. So thank you for the host. It didn't pop up in my Twitch alert, but it's showing up in my... But my bot didn't. I don't know what's going on. My computer is just flipping out. Yeah, my internet is just pure and utter rudeness. Okay, so I don't know where it cut off, as far as the, story goes. Do you guys remember where I was when it completely died? Just start from chapter 1. No! No, look at how many pages that is. That's so many pages. Did you hear the fight between Trouble and his younger brother? Between Captain Trouble and Corporal Grub. Excuse me. You know what? I'll just start that section over. No, Jimmy Ching Ching, we're reading Artemis Fowl, not Hunger Games. Although that's always an option if people really want me to. It's not currently in the voting, but I could add it to the next voting after we pick the next book. Because I don't own the books, but my mom does, so I'll start back at the beginning of this section. It's only a page behind where I was, so. LEP Retrieval 1 were the best and the brightest. It was every little fairy's dream that one day he would grow up to don the stealth black jumpsuit of the Retrieval Commandos. These were the elite. Trouble was their middle name. In the case of Captain Kelp, Trouble was actually his first name. He'd insisted on it at his manhood ceremony, having just been accepted into the academy. Trouble led his team down the sweeping avenue. As usual, he took the point position himself, determined to be the first into the fray if, as he fervently hoped, a fray developed. "Check in," he whispered into the mic that wound snake-like from his helmet. "Negative on 1. Nothing, Captain. A big negatory, Trouble." Captain Kelp winced. "We're in the field, Corporal. Follow procedure." "But Mommy said..." "I don't care what Mommy said, Corporal. Rank is rank. You will refer to me as Captain Kelp." "Yes, sir, Captain," sulked the Corporal. "But don't ask me to iron your tunic anymore." Trouble zeroed in on his brother's channel, shutting out the rest of the squad.
Shut up about Mommy, will you? And the ironing. You're only on this mission because I requested you. Now start acting like a professional or get back to the perimeter.
Okay, Trubs.
Trouble!
Shouted Captain Kelp.
It's trouble. Not Trubs or Trub. Trouble, okay?
That was the last thing I heard. The ironing in the tunic. Okay. Alright. It's not a manga, Jimmy. It's a book. Like a book with words. Full words, no pictures. But it is about a young mastermind called Artemis Fowl, who's 12 years old, and an evil genius, essentially, who has kidnapped a fairy in an effort to get gold. She is an officer of the Lower Elements Police, specifically the Recon Team, or the LEP Recon Team, LEP Recon. And he's kidnapped her to get her hostage fund. And currently we are seeing fairies that are trying to get to his manor. Let's see who we're talking to now.
Okay, Trouble. Mommy's right. You're only a baby.
Swearing very unprofessionally, Captain Kelp switched his headset back to the open channel. He was just in time to hear an unusual sound.
What was that?
What? Dunno.
Nothing, Captain.
Trouble had done a sound recognition in-service for his captain's exam, and he was pretty sure that had been caused by someone getting a chop across the windpipe. More than likely, his brother had walked into a shrub.
Grub, are you all right?
That's Corporal Grub to you.
Kelp viciously kicked a daisy.
Check in. Sound off in sequence.
1, okay.
2, fine.
3, bored but alive. 5, approaching West Wing.
Kelp froze.
Wait, 4? You there, 4? What's your situation?
Nothing, except static.
Right, 4 is down. Possibly an equipment malfunction. Still, we can't afford to take any chances. Regroup by the main door.
Your Kelp voice sounds like Teemo from the League of Legends. Which Kelp? Trouble Kelp? The captain? Or Corporal Grub Kelp? The brother? Retrieval 1 crept together, making slightly less noise than a silk spider. Kelp did a quick head count. 11. One short of a full complement. 4 was probably wandering around the rose bushes, wondering why nobody was talking to him. Then, Trouble noticed 2 things. 1. A pair of black boots were sticking out of a shrub behind the door, and 2. There was a massive human standing in the doorway. The figure was cradling a very nasty-looking gun in the crook of his arm.
Go silent,
whispered Kelp, and immediately 11 full-face visors slid down to seal in the sounds of his squad's breathing and communications.
Now, nobody panic. I think I can trace the sequence of events here. 4 is skulking around outside the door. The mudman opens it. 4 gets whacked on the noggin and lands in the bushes. No problem. Our cover is intact. Repeat, intact. So no itchy fingers, please. Corporal Kelp, check 4's vitals. The rest of you, make a hole and keep it quick. Or keep it quiet.
The squad stepped back carefully until they were standing on the manicured grassy verge. The figure before them was indeed impressive, without doubt the biggest human any of them had ever seen.
Tarfit,
breathed 2.
Maintain radio silence, except in emergencies,
ordered Kelp.
Swearing is hardly an emergency.
Secretly, however, he concurred with the sentiment. This was one time he was glad to be shielded. That man looked as if he could squash half a dozen fairies in one massive fist. Grub returned to his slot.
Forrest stable. Concussed, I'd guess. But otherwise okay. His shield's off, though, so I stuffed him in the bushes.
Well done, Corporal. Good thinking.
The last thing they needed was for For's boots to be spotted. The man moved, lumbering casually along the path. He may have glanced left or right. It was difficult to tell beneath the hood pulled over his eyes. Odd for a human to wear a hood on such a fine night.
Safety catches off,
ordered Trouble. He imagined his men rolling their eyes, like they hadn't had their safeties off for the last half hour. Still, you had to go by the book, in case of a tribunal later on. There was a time when Retrieval blasted first and answered questions never. But not anymore. Now there was always some do-gooder civilian banging on about civil rights. Even for humans, if you can believe it. The Man Mountain stopped, right in the middle of the squad. If he had been able to see them, it would be the perfect tactical position. Their own firearms were virtually useless, as they would probably do more damage to each other than the human. Fortunately, the entire squad was invisible, with the exception of 4, who was safely hidden in what appeared to be a rhododendron. There we go.
Buzz batons. Fire 'em up.
Just in case. No harm in being cautious. And when the LAP officers were switching weapons, right at that moment when their hands were fumbling with holsters, that's when the Mudman spoke.
"Evening, gentlemen,"
he said, sweeping back his hood. Funny that, thought Trouble. It was almost as if... Then he saw the makeshift goggles.
"Cover!" he screamed. "Cover!"
But it was too late. No option but to stand and fight, and that was no option at all. Butler could have taken them from the parapet, one at a time with the ivory hunter's rifle, but that wasn't the plan. This was all about making an impression, sending a message. It was standard procedure with any police force in the world to send in the cannon fodder first before opening negotiations. It was almost expected that they would meet with resistance, and Butler was happy to oblige. He peeked out through the letterbox, and, oh, happy coincidence, there was a pair of goggled eyes peeking right back at him. It was just too fortuitous to pass up.
"Bedtime,"
said Butler, heaving the door with a mighty shoulder. The fairy flew several feet before alighting in the shrubbery. Juliet would be devastated. She loved rhododendrons. There we go. She loved rhododendrons. One down, several to go. Butler pulled up the peaked hood on his field jacket, stepping onto the porch. There they were, spread out like a squadron of action men. If not for the array of very proficient-looking weaponry hanging from each belt, it would have been almost comical. Sliding his finger casually under the trigger guard, Butler strode into their midst. The bulky one at 2 o'clock was giving the orders. You could tell from the heads angled his way. The leader gave a command, and the squad switched to close-quarter weapons. It made sense. They'd only cut themselves to pieces with firearms. Time for action.
"Evening, gentlemen,"
Butler said. He couldn't help it, and it was worth it for that one moment of consternation. Then his gun was up and blazing. Captain Kelp was the first casualty, a titanium-tipped dart puncturing the neck of his suit. He went down sluggishly, as though the air had turned to water. 2 more of the squad were dropped before they had any idea what was going on. It must be quite traumatic, thought Butler, dispassionately, to lose an advantage that you've held for centuries. By now, the remains of Retrieval 1 had their buzz batons fired up and raised. But they made the mistake of hanging back, waiting for a command that was not forthcoming. This gave Butler an opportunity to take the fight to them, as if he needed another advantage. Even so, for a second, the manservant hesitated. These beings were so small, like children. Then, Grub clipped him on the elbow with his buzz baton, and 1,000 volts spread across Butler's chest. All sympathy for the little people vanished instantly. Butler grabbed the offending baton, swinging weapon and bearer like a set of bolas. Grub squealed as he was released, his newfound momentum carrying him directly into 3 of his comrades. Butler continued the swinging motion, driving punishing punches into the chests of 2 more fairies. Another clambered on his back, stinging him repeatedly with the baton. Butler fell on him. Something cracked, and the stinging stopped. Suddenly there was a barrel under his chin. One of Retrieval had managed to get his weapon cocked. Okay. Hold on. Okay.
Freeze, mud boy.
Droned a helmet-filtered voice. It was a serious-looking gun. Liquid coolant bubbled along its length.
Just give me a reason.
Butler rolled his eyes. Different race. Same macho cliches. He slapped the fairy open-handed. To the little man, it must have been like the sky falling on his head.
That reason enough for you?
Butler scrambled to his feet. Fairy bodies were scattered around him in various stages of shock and unconsciousness. Scared, definitely. Dead? Probably not. Mission accomplished. One little guy was faking, though. You could tell by the way his tiny knees knocked together. Butler picked him up by the neck, finger and thumb easily meeting around the back.
Name?
Corporal Kelp.
Well, Corporal, you tell your commander that the next time I see armed forces coming in here, they'll be picked off by a sniper fire. No darts, either. Armor-piercing bullets.
Yes, sir. Sniper fire. Got it. Seems fair.
Good. You are, however, permitted to remove your injured.
Most generous of you.
But if I see so much as the twinkle of a weapon on any of the medics, I might be tempted to detonate a few of the mines I have planted on the grounds.
Grub swallowed, his pallor increasing behind the visor.
Unarmed medics. Crystal clear.
Butler set the fairy down, brushing his tunic with massive fingers.
Now, final thing. Listening?
Furious nods.
I want a negotiator. Someone who can make decisions, not some no-ranker who has to run off back to base after every demand. Understood?
Fine. That is, I'm sure it'll be fine. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those no-rankers, so, you see, I can't actually guarantee it will be fine.
Butler was sorely tempted to drop-kick this little fellow back to his camp.
Very well, I understand. Just shut up.
Grub almost agreed, but then he clamped his mouth shut and nodded.
Good. Now, before you go, collect all weapons and helmets and make a little pile right there.
Grub took a deep breath. Ah, well, may as well go out a hero.
I can't do that.
Oh, really? And why not?
Grub drew himself up to his full height.
An LEP officer never relinquishes his weapon.
Butler nodded.
Fair enough. Thought I'd ask. Off you go, then.
Hardly able to believe his luck, Grub scurried back toward the command tower. He was the last fairy standing. Trouble was snoring in the gravel, but he, Grub Kelp, had faced down the mud monster. Wait until Mommy heard about this. Holly sat on the edge of her bed, fingers curled around the metal base. She lifted slowly, taking the weight on her arms. The strain threatened to pop her elbows from their sockets. She held it for a second, and then slammed the frame into the concrete. A satisfying cloud of dust and splinters swirled around her knees. Good, she grunted. Holly eyed the camera. Doubtless they were watching her. No time to waste. She flexed her fingers, repeating the maneuver again and again, until the steel base left deep welts in her finger joints. With each impact, more and more splinters popped from the fresh floor. After several moments, the cell door burst open, and Juliet fell into the room.
What are you doing?
she panted. "Trying to knock the house down?" "I'm hungry," shouted Holly, "and I'm fed up of waving at that stupid camera. Don't you feed your prisoners around here? I want some food." Juliet's fingers curled into a fist. Artemis had warned her to be civil, but there was a limit. "No need to get your or whatever in a twist. So, what do you fairies eat?" "Got any dolphin?" Holly asked sarcastically. Juliet shuddered. "No, I don't, you beast." "Fruit, then, or vegetables. Make sure they're washed. I don't want any of your chemical poisons in my blood." "Ha ha! What a riot you are! Don't worry, all our produce is grown naturally." Juliet paused on her way to the door. "And don't you go forgetting the rules. No trying to escape from the house, and there's no need to break up the furniture either. Don't make me demonstrate my full Nelson." As soon as Juliet's footsteps had faded, Holly began smashing the bed into the concrete. That was the thing about fairy bonds. The instructions had to be given eye to eye, and they had to be very precise. Just saying there was no need to do a thing wasn't specifically forbidding an elf to do it. And another thing, Holly had no intention of escaping from the house. That wasn't to say that she didn't mean to get out of her cell. Artemis had added yet another monitor to the bank. This one was linked to a camera in Angeline Fowl's attic room. He spared a moment to check on his mother. Sometimes it bothered him having a camera in her room. It seemed almost like spying. But it was for her own good. There was always the danger that she could hurt herself. At the moment, she was sleeping peacefully, having swallowed the sleeping pill that Juliet had left on her tray. All part of the plan. A vital part. Finally finished this tic-tac-toe game. Did you win, Paladin? Oh, and if you guys would like to vote, that link there in the chat, vote for the next book that we'll be reading. I figure we won't finish this book tonight, but I figure next week it'll probably be done, and I'd like to have a few votes in by that stream. The current books, let me go ahead and go over those real quick. Whoopsie, making noises. Sit up. Okay, so the current books that are up for vote. We've got the next book in the Artemis Fowl series, The Arctic Incident, which is book 2. So it's just the continuation of the book that I'm currently reading. Then we have The Fire Within, which when David moves in with Liz and her 11-year-old daughter, Lucy, he discovers a collection of clay dragons that may or may not come to life. David's own special dragon inspires him to write a story which reveals the secrets behind a mystery. Soon David, in order to solve the mystery and save his dragon, must master the magic of the fire within, not only with his hands, but also with his heart. So there's that book. Then we also have The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, which is his Dark Materials book 1. Lyra Belacqua is content to run wild among the scholars in Jordan College, her daemon familiar, always by her side. But the moment she hears hushed talk of dust, an extraordinary particle, she's drawn to the heart of a terrible struggle, a struggle born of gobblers and stolen children, witch clans and armored bears, and as she hurtles toward danger in the cold, far north, young Lyra never suspects the shocking truth. Her destiny must be fulfilled not in this world, but far beyond. And I believe this one. Yes, there was a movie. There was a movie of The Golden Compass. It's also a Newbery Award winner, I believe. It doesn't have it on the cover of this book, but I'm pretty sure it won some book award. It doesn't say which award, though. But yeah, so there was a movie of The Golden Compass. And then the final book on the list is His Majesty's Dragon, which is one of the books I got for Christmas. Aerial combat brings a thrilling new dimension to the Napoleonic Wars as valiant warriors rise to Britain's defense by taking to the skies. Not aboard aircraft, but atop the mighty backs of fighting dragons. When HMS Reliant captures a French frigate and seizes its precious cargo, an unhatched dragon egg, fate sweeps Captain Will Lawrence from his seafaring life into an uncertain future, and an unexpected kinship with a most extraordinary creature. Thrust into the rarefied world of the aerial corps as master of the dragon Tamaray, he will face a crash course in the daring tactics of airborne battle. For as France's own dragonborn forces rally to breach British soil in Bonaparte's boldest gambit, Lawrence and Temeraire must soar in their own baptism of fire. That is perfectly fine, Paladin. I own the entire series, and I would not mind reading through the entire series if everyone is, or if a majority of people are in agreement about that. So, but yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna lie, as much as I do enjoy the other books, I'm kind of hoping to continue Artemis Fowl. But we shall see. Okay. Butler entered the control room. He was clutching a fistful of fairy hardware and rubbing his neck.
Tricky little blighters.
Artemis looked up from the monitor bank. Any problems?
Nothing major. These little batons pack quite a punch, though. How's our prisoner?
Fine. Juliet is getting her something to eat. I'm afraid Captain Short is going a bit stir-crazy. On the screen, Holly was smashing her cot into the concrete.
It's understandable, noted the manservant. Imagine her frustration. It's not as if she can tunnel her way out.
Artemis smiled. No, the entire estate is built on a bed of limestone. Not even a dwarf could tunnel his way out of here. Or in. Wrong, as it happened. Dead wrong. A landmark moment for Artemis Fowl. The LEP had procedures for emergencies like this one. Admittedly, these did not include the retrieval squad getting hammered by a lone enemy. Still, that just made the next step all the more urgent, especially with the faintest of orange tinges creeping into the sky.
Are we good to go?
Roared Root into his mic, as though it wasn't whisper-sensitive. Good to go, thoughtfully, busy wiring the last dish on a watchtower. These military types and their catchphrases. Good to go, lock and load, I don't know, but I've been told. So insecure. Aloud he said,
No need to shout, Commander. These headsets could pick up a spider scratching in Madagascar.
And is there a spider scratching in Madagascar?
Well, I don't know. They can't really...
Well, stop changing the subject, Foley, and answer the question.
The centaur scowled. The commander took everything so literally. He plugged the dish's modem lead into his laptop.
Okay, we're good to go.
About time, too. Right. Flip the switch.
For the third time in as many moments, Foley gritted his horsey teeth. He was indeed the stereotypical, unappreciated genius. Flick the switch if you don't mind. Root didn't have the cranial capacity to appreciate what he was trying to do here. Stopping time wasn't just a matter of pressing the on button. There was a series of delicate procedures that had to be performed with utmost precision. Otherwise, the stop zone would end up just so much ash and radioactive slop. While it was true that fairies had been stopping time for millennia, these days, with satellite communication and the internet, humans were liable to notice if a zone just dropped out of time for a couple of hours. There was an age when you could throw a blanket stoppage over a whole country, and the mud people would simply think the gods were angry. But not anymore. Nowadays, the humans had instruments for measuring anything. So if there was any time stopping to be done, it had better be fine-tuned and precise. In the old days, 5 elfin warlocks would form a pentagram around the target and spread a magic shield over it, temporarily stopping time inside the enchanted enclosure. This was fine as far as it went, provided the warlocks didn't have to use the bathroom. Many a siege was lost because an elf had one glass of wine too many. Warlocks tire quickly, too, and their arms got sore. On a good day, you had maybe an hour and a half, which was hardly worth the trouble in the first place. It was Foley's idea to mechanize the whole procedure. He had the warlocks do their thing into lithium batteries, and then set up a network of receiver dishes around the designated area. Sounds simple? Well, it wasn't. But there were definite advantages. For one thing, there were no more power surges. Batteries didn't try to show off to each other. You could calculate exactly how many power cells were needed, and sieges could be extended for up to 8 hours. As it happened, the Fowl estate was the perfect location for a time stop. Isolated with a definite boundary. It even had elevated towers for the dishes, for heaven's sake. It was almost as if Artemis Fowl wanted it to be time-stopped. Foley's finger hesitated over the button. Could it be possible? After all, the human youth had been one step ahead throughout this whole affair.
Commander?
Are we online yet?
Not exactly. There's something...
Root's reaction nearly blew out the woofers in Foley's earpiece.
No, Foley, there isn't something. None of your bright ideas, thank you very much. Captain Short's life is in danger, so push the button before I climb that tower and push it with your face.
Touchy, muttered Foley, and pushed the button. I would agree, LFB. I liked the movie in its own right, but I always have problems with movies that are based on books because they never quite live up to snuff. The book is amazing, and the movie, it was alright, but not anywhere near as good as the book. I don't think I've seen that movie. Lieutenant Cudgeon checked his moonometer. You have 8 hours.
I know how much time I have, growled Root. And stop following me. Don't you have work to do?
Actually, now that you mention it, I have a biobomb to arm. Root rounded on him.
Don't annoy me, Lieutenant. Having you make comments at every turn is not improving my concentration. Just do whatever it is you feel you have to do, but be prepared to back it up at tribunal. If this one goes wrong, heads are going to roll.
Indeed, muttered Cudgeon under his breath, but mine is not going to be one of them. Root checked the sky. A shimmering azure field had descended over the Fowl estate. Good. They were in limbo. Outside the walls, life continued at an exaggerated pace, but if anyone were to somehow gain access to the manor, in spite of the fortified walls and high gate, they would find it deserted, all occupants trapped in the past. So, for the next 8 hours, it would be twilight on Fowl Estate. After that, Root could not guarantee Holly's safety. Given the gravity of the situation, it was more than likely that Cudgeon would get the go-ahead to biobomb the whole place. Root had seen a blue rinse before. No living thing escaped. Not even the rats. I'm just glad they never went ahead with the Aragon movie adaptation. There was the first one, and again, I kind of liked the movie, but I sat through the entire thing going, this is wrong, you're doing it wrong. Good night, Paladin Mike. Sleep well. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you hopefully next time. Yeah, it kind of flopped. It did kind of flop. But at the same time, I don't know. It was about dragons. I liked it. Even if it was wrong. See, I saw a movie called Aragon. There is only one movie that I deny the existence of. True. It did not relate to the books very well. It took the name of the dragon and the kid. It took the names from the books. And that was it. That was really all it took. Nothing else was correct. The only movie that never happened, to me, is The Last Airbender. That movie, nope, doesn't exist, no such thing. Everything else, I am usually okay with the movie in its own right. If I have seen the movie before reading the book, I usually like it a good deal better. If I have read the book and then see the movie, I'm usually pretty disappointed. So, but that being said, I usually, while being moderately disappointed, I usually enjoy the movie in its own right. If I kind of disconnect my brain from the idea that it is based on a book. Oh, well, that would be why I'm not noted. Okay. There we go. So yeah, I can appreciate a movie as a movie, but as a book adaptation, okay. Root caught up with Foley at the base of the North Tower. The Centaur had parked a shuttle by the 3-foot-thick wall. Already, the work area was a mess of tangled wires and pulsating fiber optics.
Foley, are you in here?
The Centaur's foil-capped head emerged from the belly of a disemboweled hard drive.
Over here, Commander. You've come to push a button with my face, I presume.
Root almost laughed.
Don't tell me you're looking for an apology, Foley. I've already used my quota for today, and that was to a lifelong friend.
Cudgeon? Forgive me, Commander, but I wouldn't waste my apologies on the Lieutenant. He won't be wasting any on you when he stabs you in the back.
You're wrong about him. Cudgeon is a good officer. A bit eager, certainly, but he'll do the right thing when the time comes.
The right thing for himself, maybe. I don't think Holly is at the top of his priority list.
Root didn't answer. He couldn't.
And another thing, I have a sneaking suspicion that young Artemis Fowl wanted us to stop time. After all, everything else we've tried has played straight into his hands.
Root rubbed his temples.
That's impossible. How could a human know about time stoppage? Anyway, this is no time for theorizing, Foley. I have less than 8 hours to clean up this mess. So what have you got for me?
Foley clopped over to an equipment rack clamped to the wall.
No heavy armament, that's for sure. Not after what happened to Retrieval 1. No helmet either. That beast of a mudman seems to collect them. No, to show good faith, we're going to send you in unarmed and unarmored.
Root snorted.
What manual did you get this from?
It's standard operating procedure. Fostering trust speeds communication.
Oh, stop quoting and give me something to shoot.
Suit yourself.
sighed Foley, selecting what looked like a finger from the rack.
What's that?
It's a finger. What does it look like?
A finger?
Admitted Root.
Yes, but not any ordinary finger.
He glanced around to make sure that no one else was watching.
The tip contains a pressurized dart. One shot only. You tap the knuckle with your thumb, and someone goes Betty-bye.
Why haven't I seen this before?
It's a covert kind of thing.
And?
Said Root suspiciously.
Well, there have been accidents.
Tell me fully.
Our agents keep forgetting they have it on.
Meaning they shoot themselves.
Foley nodded miserably.
One of the best sprites was picking his nose at the time. 3 days on the critical list.
Oh. Root rolled the memory latex on his index finger, where it immediately assumed the shape and flush tone of the host digit.
Don't worry, Foley. I'm not a complete idiot. Anything else?
Foley unhooked what appeared to be a false bottom from the equipment rack.
You're not serious. What does that do?
Nothing,
admitted the centaur.
but it gets a great laugh at parties.
Root chuckled. Twice. That was a major lapse for him.
Okay, levity over. Are you gonna wire me?
Naturally. One iris cam. What color?
He peered into the commander's eyes.
Mud brown.
He selected a small vial from the shelf and removed the electronic contact lens from a fluid capsule. Plucking Root's eyelid with a thumb and forefinger, he slotted in the iris cam.
That might irritate you. Try not to rub, or it could end up in the back of your eye. Then we'd be looking into your head, and there's nothing interesting in there, heaven knows.
Root blinked, resisting the urge to knead his watering eye.
That's it?
Foley nodded.
That's all we dare risk.
The commander agreed reluctantly. His hip felt very light without a tri-barreled blaster hanging from it.
Okay, I suppose this amazing dart finger will have to do. Honestly, Foley, if this blows up in my face, you'll be on the next shuttle back to Haven.
This is Tumblr in a nutshell? Okay. The centaur snickered.
Just be careful in the toilet.
Root didn't laugh. There were some things you didn't joke about. Artemis's watch had stopped. It was as though Greenwich wasn't there anymore. Or perhaps, mused Artemis, we're the ones who have disappeared. He checked CNN. It had frozen. A picture of Riz Khan jittered slightly on the screen. Artemis could not hold back a satisfied smile. They had done it, just like the book said. The LEP had stopped time, all according to plan. Time to check out a theory. Artemis wheeled over to the monitor bank and punched up the MAM cam on the 28-inch main monitor. Angeline Fowl was no longer on the Chase Lounge. Artemis panned around the room. It was empty. His mother had gone. Disappeared. His smile widened. Perfect. Just as he'd suspected. Artemis switched his attention to Holly Short. She was banging the bed again. Occasionally, she would rise from the mattress, pounding the wall with her bare fists. Maybe it was more than frustration. Could there be a method in her madness? He tapped the monitor with his slim finger. What are you up to, Captain? What's your little plan? He was distracted by a movement on the Avenue monitor. At last, he breathed. The games begin. A figure was advancing down the avenue. Small, but imposing nonetheless. Unshielded, too. Finished play-acting, then. Artemis punched the intercom button. Butler, we have a guest. I'll show him in. You get back here and police the surveillance cameras. Butler's voice came back tinny through the speaker.
10-4, Artemis. I'm on my way.
Artemis buttoned his designer jacket, pausing at the mirror to straighten his tie. The trick to negotiation was to hold all the cards going in, and even if you didn't, to try to look as though you did. Artemis put on his best sinister face. Evil, he told himself. Evil, but highly intelligent. And determined. Don't forget determined. He put a hand on the doorknob. Steady now. Deep breaths. And try not to think about the possibility that you have misjudged the situation and are about to be shot dead. 1, 2, 3. He opened the door. Good evening, he said, every inch the gracious host, albeit a sinister, evil, intelligent, and determined one. Root stood on the doorstep, palms up, the universal gesture for, "Look, I'm not carrying a big murderous weapon."
"You're Fowl?"
"Artemis Fowl, at your service. And you are?"
"LAP Commander Root. Right, we know each other's names. So, could we get on with this?"
"Certainly." Root decided to chance taking out his weapon.
Step outside then, where I can see you."
Artemis's face hardened. "Have you learned nothing from my demonstrations? The ship? Your commandos? Do I need to kill someone?"
"No," said Root hurriedly. You only meant to lower me outside, where I could be snatched and used to trade. Please, Commander Root, raise your game, or send someone intelligent."
Root felt the blood pump through his cheeks.
"Now you just listen to me, you young—"
Artemis smiled, in command again. "Not very good negotiation techniques, Commander, to lose your cool before we even get to the table."
Root took several deep breaths. "Fine. Whatever you say. Where would you prefer to conduct our talks?"
"Inside, of course. You have my permission to enter. But remember, Captain Short's life is in your hands. Be careful with it." Root followed his host down the vaulted hallway. Generations of fowls glared down at him from classical portraits. They passed through a stained oak doorway to a long conference room. There were 2 places set at a round table, complete with pads, ashtrays, and water jugs. Root was delighted to see the ashtrays, and immediately pulled a half-chewed cigar from his vest.
"Maybe you're not such a barbarian after all,"
he grunted, exhaling a huge cloud of green smoke. The commander ignored the water jugs, instead pouring himself a shot of something purple from a hip flask. He drank deeply, belched, and sat. "Ready?" Artemis shuffled his notes, like a news anchor. "Here is the situation as I see it. I have the means to expose your subterranean existence, and you are powerless to stop me. So, basically, whatever I ask for is a small price to pay." Root spat out a shred of fungus tobacco.
"So, you think you could just put all this information out over the internet?"
"Well, not immediately. Not with the time-stopping effect." Root choked on a lungful of smoke. The race in the hole. Gone.
"Well, if you know about the time stop, you must also know that you are completely cut off from the outside world. You are, in effect, powerless."
Artemis jotted a note on the pad. "Let's save some time here. I grow weary of your clumsy bluffs. In the case of an abduction, the LAP will first send a crack retrieval team to get back what has been lost. You have done so. Excuse me while I titter. Crack team? Honestly, a Cub Scout patrol armed with water pistols could have defeated them." Root fumed silently, taking out his anger on the cigar butt. "The next official step is a negotiation. And finally, when the 8-hour time limit is about to run out, and if no solution can be reached, a biobomb is detonated, contained by the time field."
"You appear to know an awful lot about us, Master Fowl. I don't suppose you'll tell me how?"
"Correct." Root mashed the remains of his cigar into the crystal ashtray.
"So, let's have it then. What are your demands?"
"One demand, singular. Artemis slid his notepad across the polished table. Root read what was written there.
1 ton of 24-karat gold. Small, unmarked ingots only. You can't be serious.
Oh, but I am. Root sat forward in his chair.
Don't you see? Your position is untenable. Either you give us back Captain Short, or we will be forced to kill you all. There is no middle ground. We don't negotiate. Not really. I'm just here to explain the facts to you.
Artemis smiled his vampire smile. Oh, but you will negotiate with me, Commander.
Oh, really? And what makes you so special?
I am special, because I know how to escape the time field.
Impossible! Snorted Root. Can't be done.
Oh, yes it can. Trust me, I haven't been wrong yet. Root tore off the top page, folding it into his pocket.
I'll have to think about this.
Take your time. We have 8 hours. Excuse me, 7.5 hours. Then time's up for everybody. Root said nothing for a long while, tapping his nails on the tabletop. He took a breath to speak, then changed his mind and stood abruptly.
We'll be in touch. Don't worry, I'll see myself out.
Artemis pushed his chair back. You do that, but remember this. None of your race has permission to enter here while I'm alive. Hello, Todd and Gatekeeper. How are you two doing tonight? How's it going, Todd? Root stalked down the hallway, glaring back at the oil paintings. Better to leave now and process this new information. The Fowl Boy was indeed a slippery opponent, but he was making one basic mistake. The assumption that Root would play by the rules. However, Julius Root hadn't gotten his commander's stripes by following any rulebook. Time for a bit of unorthodox action. Did you just caster me in my own chat? Really, Todd? Really? I'm well. Was fighting a new build of OBS. Oh no, is OBS being dumb? I'm sorry to hear that. Also, have you been in the Odd Team Discord recently? Avanto is rubbing off on me. Oh no. Please no. We don't need another one. No, I kid. Avanto is fantastic.
Avanto's fantabulous.
Have not, sadly. Okay. We've just been trying to come up with ideas for next Friday, the 5th, the odd multi-stream. I've got a poll in there, but it's not really there's it's like open for suggestions or what not. I've got a straw poll that had some ideas. Then there were some others mentioned that I can't remember, but yeah, there's that, and then there's a couple other things that I've brought up because I get ideas at random ass times in the morning. So yeah, just to let you know, there's stuff there. The videotape from Root's iris cam was being reviewed by experts.
You see there,
said Professor Cumulus, a behavioral specialist,
that twitch. He's lying.
Nonsense, huffed Dr. Argon, a psychologist from below the United States.
He's itchy, that's all. He's itchy, so he scratches. Nothing sinister in it.
Cumulus turned to Foley.
Listen to him. How can I be expected to work with this charlatan?
Witch doctor,
counted Argon. Foley raised his hairy palms.
Gentlemen, please. We need agreement here. A concrete profile.
It's no use,
said Argon.
I can't work in these conditions.
Cumulus folded his arms.
If he can't work, neither can I.
Root strode through the shuttle double doors. His trademark purple complexion was even rosier than usual.
That human is toying with us. I will not have it. Now, what did our experts make of the tape?
Foley moved slightly to the side, allowing the commander a clear run at the so-called experts.
Apparently, they can't work in these conditions.
Root's eyes narrowed to slits, bringing his prey into sharp focus.
Excuse me?
The good doctor is a half-wit, said Cumulus, unfamiliar with the commander's temper.
I'm a half-wit?
Stuttered Argon, equally ignorant.
What about you, you cave fairy? Plastering your absurd interpretations into the most innocent of gestures.
Innocent? That the boy is a bag of nerves. Obviously lying. It's a textbook.
Root slammed a clenched fist onto the table, sending a spiderweb of cracks scurrying across the surface.
Enough!
No, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Apparently, I confused the word enough for silence, or I confused the word silence for enough.
Silence!
And silence there was. Instantly.
Now, you two experts are on handsome retainers for your profiling work, correct?
The pair nodded, afraid to speak in case that broke the silence rule.
This is probably the case of your lives, so I want you to concentrate very hard. Understood?
More nods. Root popped the camera out of his weeping eye.
Fast forward it fully, toward the end.
The tape hopped forward erratically. On screen, Root followed the human into his conference room.
There! Stop it there! Can you zoom in on his face?
Can I zoom in on his face? Snorted Foley. Can a dwarf steal the web from under a spider?
Yes,
replied Root. That was a rhetorical question, actually.
I don't need a grammar lesson, Foley. Just zoom in, would you?
Foley ground his tombstone teeth.
Okay, boss. Will do.
The centaur's fingers prodded the keyboard with lightning speed. Artemis's visage grew to fill the plasma screen.
I'd advise you to listen,
said Root, squeezing the expert's shoulders.
This is a pivotal moment in your careers.
I am special, said the mouth on the screen, because I can escape the time field.
Now tell me,
said Root,
is he lying?
Run it again, said Cumulus. Show me the eyes. Argon nodded. Yes, just the eyes. Foley tapped a few more keys, and Artemis's deep blue eyes expanded to the width of the screen. I am special, boomed the human voice, because I can escape the time field.
Well, is he lying?
Cumulus and Argon looked at each other, all traces of antagonism gone. No, they said simultaneously. He's telling the truth, added the behaviorist. Or, clarified the psychologist, at least he thinks he is. Root swabbed his eye with a cleansing solution.
That's what I thought. When I looked that human in the face, I figured he was either a genius or crazy.
Artemis's cool eyes glared at them from the screen.
So, which is it?
Asked Foley.
Genius or crazy?
Root grabbed his tri-barreled blaster from the gun rack.
What's the difference?
He snapped, strapping his trusty weapon to his hip.
Get me an outside line to Get me an outside line to E1. This foul person seems to know all of our rules, so it's time to break a few.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break to run to the bathroom, guys, and then we will go on to our last chapter of the night. Yeah. Speaking of Avanto from earlier, I'm going to play some of his music, Where the Devil Is My Bookmark. I don't want to just leave my book lying open. Last chapter for the night, yeah. I can only read so much before my voice starts to strain. Avanto is good at the musics, except when he says it. Oops. True facts, true facts. Avanto is very good at the musics. But yeah, I'll be right back, guys. Gonna run to the bathroom real quick, and until then, enjoy this one. Okay, I'm back. So the one that just finished playing was actually not by Avanto, I just noticed. It's by Brian Tyler. It was on Avanto's SoundCloud. I need to get his actual Bandcamp from him. Okay. Cut me corner. I have more cheese because I like cheese. Okay. Well, before I get comfortable, I might as well grab myself another tea. Make a lot more noise. Wait. Kojak. Just Kojak cubes. You are human, ergo you like cheese. True facts. Very true facts. Hold on just 1 second, guys. Well, actually, I'll reply to that later. Okay. Oh, but I need to mute it. Oh, thank you, Todd. Todd, you are a lifesaver. I do need to mute my phone so that the buzzing isn't obnoxious. Okay. Alrighty. Development on OBS has ceased? Oh, really? See, I use XSplit now. Ever since I started having problems with OBS, I started using XSplit instead, so... Come on. Okay. Alright. There's been no development on original OBS since November. Excuse me. Which was just oh wow. I've been using XSplit since around November, I think. Sorry. Sorry for the loud noises. I need to keep my throat hydrated. Well, that sucks. Indeed. Indeed it does. However, OBS multi-platform has been getting a good bit... Oh, okay. That's understandable, Ballin. I use XSplit because OBS stopped recognizing my mic at one point, and I couldn't get it to work, so I ended up downloading XSplit because I wanted to actually stream. And at first I just did the free XSplit, but then I decided I wanted to use XSplit more permanently, and I got the cheaper one that you can buy, and I will probably eventually get the next one, the next higher. There's like personal and then there's professional or something, and I might get the professional one, but we'll see. I kind of need to get job things worked out before I can do that. So next flurry of tweets. OBSMP, what the fuck, man? Right? Okay. Chapter 7. Mulch. Time to introduce a new character to our otherworldly pageant. Well, not strictly speaking a new character. We have encountered him before, in the LEP booking line, on remand for numerous larcenies. Mulch Diggums, the kleptomaniac dwarf. A dubious individual, even by Artemis Fowl's standards, as if this account didn't already suffer from an overdose of amoral individuals. Born to a typical dwarf cavern-dwelling family. Okay, born to a typical dwarf cabin-dwelling. Nope, I can't pronounce. Born to a typical dwarf cavern-dwelling family, Mulch had decided early that mining was not for him, and resolved to put his talents to another use, namely digging and entering. Generally, entering my people's property. Of course, this meant forfeiting his magic. Dwellings were sacred. If you broke that rule, you had to be prepared to accept the consequences. Mulch didn't mind. He didn't care much for magic anyway. It had never been much use for it down in the mines. Things had gone pretty well for a few centuries, and he'd built up quite a lucrative above-ground memorabilia business. That was, until he tried to sell the Jules Remit Cup to an undercover LEP operative. From then on, his luck had turned, and he'd been arrested over 20 times to date. And he had been arrested over 20 times to date. A total of 300 years in and out of prison. I don't mind paying for a program, but not on the monthly. Yeah, that's understandable. Did that for EverQuest, never again. Yeah, I can understand that. Tongue twister. Yeah, there are some things that just trip me up for some reason. Okay. Mulch had a prodigious appetite for tunneling, and that, unfortunately, is a literal translation. For those unfamiliar with the mechanics of dwarf tunneling, I shall endeavor to explain them as tastefully as possible. Like some members of the reptile family, dwarf males can unhinge their jaws, allowing them to ingest several pounds of earth a second. This material is processed by a super efficient metabolism, stripped of any useful minerals, and ejected at the other end, as it were. Charming. I don't mind paying monthly, but not for something vital. If a payment snafu happened... Very good point. Very good point, Ballin. Actually, I think I need to look into that, because I did just get a new debit card. I don't remember if I have XSplit set up through my PayPal or through my card. Huh. Thank you for reminding me of that, Ballin. Not something I had thought about. At present, Mulch was languishing in a stone-walled cell in LEP Central. At least, he was trying to project an image of languishing, unperturbed kind of dwarf. Actually, he was quaking in his steel-toe-capped boots. The Goblin-Dwarf turf war was flaring up at the moment, and some bright-spark LEP elf had seen fit to put him in a cell with a gang of psyched-up goblins. An oversight, perhaps. More likely a spot of revenge for trying to pick his arresting officer's pocket in the booking line.
So, dwarf,
sneered the head honcho goblin, a wart-faced fellow covered in tattoos.
How come you don't chew your way out of here?
Mulch rapped on the walls.
Solid rock.
The goblin laughed.
So what? Can't be any harder than your dwarf skull.
His cronies laughed. So did Mulch. He thought it might be wise. Wrong.
You laughing at me, dwarf?
Mulch stopped laughing.
Oh, with you, he corrected. I'm laughing with you. That skull joke was pretty funny.
The goblin advanced until his slimy nose was a centimeter from Mulch's own.
You patronizing me, dwarf?
Mulch swallowed, calculating. If he unhinged now, he could probably swallow the leader before the others reacted. Still, goblins were murder on the digestion. Very bony. The goblin conjured up a fireball around his fist.
I asked you a question, Stumpy.
Mulch could feel every sweat gland on his body pop into instant overdrive. Dwarfs did not like fire. They didn't even like thinking about flames. Unlike the rest of the fairy races, dwarfs had no desire to live above ground, too close to the sun. Ironic for someone in the mud people possession liberation business.
No need for that,
he stammered.
I was just trying to be friendly.
Friendly,
Scoffed Wartface.
Your kind doesn't know the meaning of the word. Cowardly backstabbers, the lot of ya.
Mulch nodded diplomatically.
We have been known to be a bit treacherous. A bit treacherous! A bit treacherous! My brother Flem was ambushed by a crowd of dwarfs disguised as dung heaps. He's still in traction.
Mulch nodded sympathetically.
The whole dung heap ruse. Disgraceful. One of the reasons I don't associate with the Brotherhood.
Wartface twirled the fireball between his fingers.
There are two things under this world that I really despise.
Mulch had a feeling that he was about to find out what they were.
One is a stinking dwarf.
No surprises there.
And the other is a traitor to his own kind. And from what I hear, you fall neatly into both categories.
Mulch smiled weakly.
Just my luck. Luck ain't got nothing to do with it. Fortune delivered you into my hands.
On another day, Mulch might have pointed out that luck and fortune were basically the same thing. Not today.
You like fire, dwarf?
Mulch shook his head. Wartface grinned.
Now, ain't that a shame? 'Cause any second now, I'm gonna ram this here fireball down your throat.
The dwarf swallowed dryly. Wasn't it just typical of the dwarf brotherhood? What do dwarfs hate? Fire. Who are the only creatures with the ability to conjure fireballs? Goblins. So, who did the dwarfs pick a fight with? A real no-brainer. Mulch backed up to the wall.
Careful there, we could all go up. Not us.
Wartface grinned, snorting the fireball up two elongated nostrils.
Completely fireproof.
Mulch was perfectly aware of what would happen next. He'd seen it too many times in the back alleys. A group of goblins would corner a stray brother dwarf, pin him down, and then the leader would give him the double barrel straight in the face. Wartface's nostrils quivered as he prepared to vent the inhaled fireball. Mulch quailed. There was only one chance. The goblins had made a basic mistake. They'd forgotten to pin his arms. The goblin drew a breath through his mouth, then closed it. More exhalation pressure for the fire stream. He tilted his head back, pointing his nose at the dwarf, and let fly. Quick as a flash, Mulch jammed his thumbs up Wartface's nostrils. Disgusting? Yes, but definitely better than becoming dwarf kebab. The fireball had nowhere to go. It rebounded on the bells of Mulch's thumbs and ricocheted back into the goblin's head. The tear ducts provided the path of least resistance, so the flames compressed into pressurized streams, erupting just below the goblin's eyes. That Turtle Girl 32, thank you for the follow. Glad you're enjoying the stream thus far. Hope you continue to enjoy, and welcome to the dork side. How you doing tonight, Turtle Girl? The tear ducts provided the path of least resistance, so the flames compressed into pressurized streams, erupting just below the goblin's eyes. A sea of flames spread across the cell roof. Mulch withdrew his thumbs and, after a quick wipe, thrust them in his mouth, allowing the natural balm in his saliva to begin the healing process. Of course, if he'd still had his magic, he could have just wished the scorched digits better. But that was the price you paid for a life of crime. Yes, the dork sighed. Wartface didn't look so good. Flame-proof goblins may be, but the errant fireball had given his tubes a good scouring. He swayed like a strand of seaweed, then collapsed face down on the concrete floor. Something crunched. Probably a big goblin nose. The other gang members did not react favorably.
Look what he did to the boss. That stinking stump. Let's fry him.
Mulch backed up even further. He'd been hoping the remaining goblins would lose their nerve once their leader was out of commission. Apparently not. Even though it was most definitely not in his nature, Mulch had no option but to attack. He unhinged his jaw and leaped forward, clamping his teeth around the foremost goblin's head.
Ow! Boff!
He shouted around the obstruction in his mouth.
The
others froze, uncertain of their next move. Of course, they'd all seen that what dwarf molars could do to a goblin head. Not a pretty sight. Each one popped a fireball in his fist.
You can't get us all, Stumpy.
Mulch resisted the impulse to bite down. It is the strongest of dwarf urges, a genetic memory born from millennia spent tunneling. The fact that the goblin was wriggling slimily didn't help. His options were running out. The gang was advancing, and he was powerless as long as his mouth was full. It was crunch time. Pardon the pun. Suddenly, the cell door clanked open, and what seemed like an entire squadron of LEP officers flooded the confined space. Mulch felt the cold steel of a gun barrel against his temple. Hold on. Okay.
Spit out the prisoner,
ordered a voice. Mulch was delighted to comply. A thoroughly slimed goblin collapsed retching on the floor.
You goblins, put him out!
One by one, the fireballs were extinguished.
That's not my fault,
whined Mulch, pointing to the spasming Wartface.
He blew himself up.
The officer holstered his weapon, drawing out a set of cuffs.
I couldn't care less what you do to each other,
he said, spinning Mulch and snapping the cuffs on.
If it was up to me, I'd put the whole lot of you in a big room and come back a week later to sluice it out. But Commander Root wants to see you above ground ASAP. ASAP? Now, if not sooner.
Mulch knew Root. The commander was responsible for several of his government hotel visits. If Julius wanted to see him, it probably wasn't for drinks and a movie.
Now? But it's daylight out. I'll burn.
The LEP officer laughed.
It ain't daylight where you're going, pal. Where you're going, it ain't anything.
Root was waiting for the dwarf inside the time-field portal. The portal was yet another of Foley's inventions. Fairies could be introduced to and leave the time field without affecting the altered flow inside the field. This effectively meant that even though it took nearly 6 hours to get Mulch to the surface, he was injected into the field only moments after Root had the notion to send for him. It was Mulch's first time in a field. He stood watching life proceed at an exaggerated rate outside the shimmering corona. Cars zipped by at impossible speeds, and clouds tumbled across the skyline as though driven by force 10 gales.
Mulch, you little reprobate,
roared Root.
You can take off that suit now. The field is UV filtered, or so I'm told.
The dwarf had been issued a blackout suit at E1. Even though dwarfs had thick skins, they were extremely sensitive to sunlight and had a burn time of less than 3 minutes. Mulch peeled off the skin-tight suit.
Nice to see you, Julius.
That's Commander Root to you.
Commander now. I heard that. Clerical error, was it?
Root's teeth ground his cigar to a pulp.
I don't have time for this impudence, convict. And the only reason that my boot is not up your behind right now is that I have a job for you.
Mulch frowned.
Convict? I have a name, you know, Julius.
Root squatted to the dwarf's level.
I don't know what dream world you live in, convict, but in the real world, you are a criminal, and it is my job to ensure your life is as unpleasant as possible. So if you're expecting civility just because I've testified against you some 15 times, forget it!
Mulch rubbed his wrists, where the handcuffs had left red welts.
Fine, Commander.
No need to blow a gasket. I'm not a murderer, you know. Just a petty criminal.
From what I hear, you merely made the transformation below in the cells.
Not my fault. They attacked me.
Root screwed a fresh cigar into his mouth.
Fine, whatever. Just follow me, and don't steal anything.
Yes, sir, Commander,
said Mulch innocently. He didn't need to steal anything else. He'd already palmed Root's field access card when the commander had made the mistake of leaning over. They crossed the retrieval perimeter to the avenue.
Do you see that manor?
What manor?
Root rounded on him.
I don't have time for this, convict. Nearly half my time stop has elapsed. Another few hours, and one of my best officers will be blue-rinsed.
Mulch shrugged.
None of my concern. I'm just a criminal, remember? And by the way, I know what you want me to do. And the answer is no.
I haven't even asked you yet.
It's obvious. I'm a housebreaker. That's a house. You can't go in because you'll lose your magic, but my magic is already gone. 2 and 2.
Root spat out the cigar.
Don't you have any civic pride? Our entire way of life is on the line here.
Not my way of life. Fairy prison, human prison, it's all the same to me.
The commander thought about it.
Okay, you slime. 50 years off your sentence. I want amnesty. In your dreams, Mulch.
Take it or leave it.
75 years in minimum security. You take it or leave it.
Mulch pretended to think. It was all academic, seeing as he intended to escape anyway.
Single cell?
Yes, single cell. Now, will you do it?
Very well, Julius. Only because it's you.
Foley was searching for a matching iris cam.
Hazel, I think. Or perhaps tawny. You really do have stunning eyes, Mr. Mulch. Thank you, Foley. My mother always said they were my most attractive feature.
Root was pacing the shuttle floor.
You two do realize we're on a deadline here, don't you? Never mind matching the color. Just give him a camera.
Foley picked a lens from its solution with tweezers.
This is not just vanity, Commander. The closer the match, the less interference from the actual eye.
Whatever. Just get on with it.
Foley grabbed Mulch's chin, holding him still.
There you are. We're with you all the way.
Foley twisted a tiny cylinder into the thick tufts of hair growing from Mulch's ear.
Wired for sound now, too, in case you need to call for assistance.
The dwarf smiled wryly.
Forgive me for not swelling with confidence. I find I've always done better on my own.
If you can call 17 convictions doing better,
chuckled Root.
Oh, we have time for jokes now, do we?
Root grabbed him by the shoulder.
You're right. We don't. Let's go.
He dragged Mulch across a grassy verge to the cluster of cherry trees.
I want you to tunnel in there and find out how this foul person knows so much about us. Probably some surveillance device. Whatever it is, destroy it. Find Captain Short if possible, and see what you can do for her. If she is dead, at least it'll clear the way for a biobomb.
Mulch squinted across the landscape.
I don't like it.
What don't you like?
The lie of the land. I smell limestone. Solid rock foundation. There might not be a way in.
Fully trotted across.
I've done a scan. The original structure is based totally on rock, but some of the latter extensions stray under clay. The wine cellar in the south wing appears to have a wooden floor. It should be no problem for someone with a mouth like yours.
Mulch decided to take that as a statement of fact, rather than an insult. He opened the back flap on his tunneling pants.
Right. Stand back.
Root and the surrounding LEP officers rushed for cover, but Fully, who had never actually seen a dwarf tunneling, decided to stay for a peek.
Good luck, Mulch.
The dwarf unhinged his jaw. "Uncle," he mumbled, bending over for launch. The centaur looked around.
Where's everyone?
He never finished that statement, because a blob of recently swallowed and even more recently recycled limestone whacked him in the face. By the time he'd cleared his eyes, Mulch had disappeared down a vibrating hole, and there was the sound of hearty laughter shaking the cherry trees. Mulch followed a loamy vein through a volcanic fold in the rock. Nice consistency. Not too many loose stones. Plenty of insect life, too. Vital for strong, healthy teeth, a dwarf's most important attribute. The first thing a prospective mate looked at. Mulch went low to the limestone, his belly almost scraping the rock. The deeper the tunnel, the less chance of subsidence on the surface. You couldn't be too careful these days. Not with motion sensors and landmines. Mud people went to extraordinary lengths to protect their valuables. With good reason, as it happened. Mulch felt a vibration cluster to his left. Rabbits. The dwarf fixed the location in his internal compass. Always useful to know where the local wildlife hung out. He skirted the warren, following the manor foundations along in a long northwesterly loop. Wine cellars were easy to locate. Over the centuries, residue seeped through the floor, infusing the land beneath with the wine's personality. This one was somber. Nothing daring here. A touch of fruit, but not enough to lighten the flavor. Definitely an occasion wine on the bottom rack. Mulch burped. That was a good day. That was good clay. The dwarf aimed his scything jaws skyward, punching through the floorboards. He hauled himself through the jagged hole, shaking the last of the recycled mud from his pants. He was in a blessedly dark room, perfect for dwarf vision. His sonar had guided him to an uncovered spot in the floor. 3 feet to the left, and he would have emerged in a huge barrel of Italian red. Mulch rehinged his jaw and patted across to the wall. He flattened a conch-like ear to the red brickwork. For a moment, he was absolutely still, absorbing the house's vibrations. A lot of low-frequency humming. There was a generator somewhere, and plenty of juice running through the wires. Thank you, Kemi de Proud. I'm glad you like it. Footsteps, too. Way up. Maybe on the 3rd floor. And close by. A crashing sound. Metal on concrete. There it was again. That wasn't sarcasm. Okay, good. I usually equate sarcasm with kappa rather than winks, so. A crashing sound. Metal on concrete. There it was again. Someone was building something. Or breaking something down. Something skittered past his foot. Mulch squashed it instinctively. It was a spider. Just a spider.
Sorry, little friend,
he said to the gray smear.
I'm a bit on the jittery side.
The steps were wooden, of course. More than a century old, too, by the smell of them. Steps like that creaked as soon as you looked at them. Better than any pressure pads for giving away intruders. Mulch climbed along the edges, 1 foot in front of the other, right in by the wall where the wood had the most support and was less likely to creak. This was not as simple as it sounds. Dwarf feet are designed for spade work, not for the delicate intricacies of ballet dancing or balancing on wooden steps. Nonetheless, Mulch reached the door without incident. A couple of minor squeaks, but nothing that would be detectable by human ears or hardware. The door was locked, naturally, but it may as well not have been for all the challenge it presented to a kleptomaniac dwarf. Mulch reached into his beard, plucking out a sturdy hair. Dwarf hair is radically different from the human variety. Mulch's beard and head hair were actually a matrix of antennae that helped him to navigate and avoid danger below ground. Once removed from its pore, the hair immediately stiffened in rapid rigor mortis. Mulch twisted the end in the seconds before it became completely rigid. A perfect pick. 1 quick jiggle, and the lock yielded. Only 2 tumblers. Terrible security. Typical of humans. They never expected an attack from below. Mulch stepped on to a parquet corridor. The whole place smelled of money. He could make a fortune here, if only he had the time. There were cameras just below the architrave, tastefully done, nestling in the natural shadows, but vigilant nonetheless. Mulch stood for a moment, calculating the system's blind spot. Kermit the Proud, thank you for the follow. Glad you're enjoying the stream thus far. Hope you continue to enjoy, and welcome to the dork side. Mulch stood for a moment, calculating the system's blind spot. 3 cameras on the corridor. 90-second sweep. No way through.
You could ask for help,
said a voice in his ear.
Fully?
Mulch pointed his wired eyeball at the nearest camera.
Can you do anything about those?
He whispered. The dwarf heard the sound of a keyboard being manipulated, and suddenly his right eye zoomed like a camera lens.
Handy,
breathed Mulch.
I've got to get me one of these.
Roosh's voice crackled through the tiny speaker.
No chance, convict. Government issue. Anyway, what would you do with one in prison? Get a close-up of the other side of your cell?
You're such a charmer, Julius. What's the matter? Are you jealous because I'm succeeding where you failed?
Root's foul swearing was drowned out by Foley.
Okay, I've got it. Simple video network. Not even digital. I'm going to broadcast a loop of the last 10 seconds to every camera through our dishes. That should give you a few minutes.
Mulch shifted uncomfortably.
How long will that take? I'm a bit exposed here, you know.
It's already started, replied Foley. So get moving.
Are you sure?
Of course I'm sure. Elementary electronics. I've been messing with human surveillance since kindergarten. You'll just have to trust me.
I'd rather trust a bunch of humans not to hunt a species to extinction. I'm sorry. He'd rather trust a bunch of humans not to hunt a species to extinction than trust an LEP consultant, thought Mulch. But aloud he said,
Okay, I'm on my way. Over and out.
He sneaked down the hall. Even his hands were sneaky, patting the air as if he could somehow make himself lighter. Whatever that centaur did must have worked, because there were no agitated mud people racing down the stairs, waving primitive gunpowder weapons. Stairs. Stairs. Mulch had a thing for stairs. They were like pre-dug shafts. He found that, inevitably, the best booty lay at their summit. And what a stairway. Stained oak, with the intricate carvings generally associated with either the 18th century or the obscenely rich. Mulch rubbed his finger along an ornate banister. In this case, probably both. Still, no time to moon about. Stairways did not tend to remain deserted for long, especially during a siege. Who could tell how many bloodthirsty troopers waited behind each door, eager for a fairy head to add to their stuffed trophy wall? Mulch climbed carefully, taking nothing for granted. Even solid oak creaked. He stuck to the borders, avoiding the carpet inlay. The dwarf knew from conviction number 8 how easy it was to conceal a pressure pad beneath the deep shag of some antique weave. He reached the landing with his head still attached to his shoulders. But there was another problem quite literally brewing. Dwarf digestion, due to its accelerated rate, can be quite explosive. The loosely packed soil on the fowl estate was very well aerated, and a lot of that air had entered Mulch's tubes, along with the soil and minerals. Now the air wanted to get out. Dwarf etiquette dictated that gas be passed while still in the tunnel, but Mulch didn't have time for manners. Now he regretted not taking a moment to get rid of the gas while he was still in the cellar. The problem with dwarf gas was that it couldn't go up, only down. Imagine, if you will, the catastrophic events of burping while digesting a mouthful of clay. Total system backup. Not a pretty sight. Thus, dwarf anatomy ensured that all gas was passed below, actually aiding in the expulsion of unwanted clay. Mulch wrapped his arms around his stomach. He'd better get out of the open. A blowout on a landing like this could take out the windows. He shuffled along the corridor, skipping through the first doorway he encountered. More cameras. Quite a lot of them, in fact. Mulch studied the lens sweep. 4 were surveying the general floor space, but another 3 were fixed.
Foley, you there?
Whispered the dwarf.
No.
The typical sarcastic reply.
I have much better things to do than worry about the collapse of civilization as we know it. Yes, thank you. Don't let my life being in danger interrupt your merriment. I'll try not to. I have a challenge for you.
Foley was instantly interested.
Really? Go on.
Mulch pointed his gaze at the recessed cameras, half hidden in the swirling architrave.
I need to know where those 3 cameras are pointing. Exactly.
Foley laughed.
That's not a challenge. Those old video systems emit faint ion beams. Invisible to the naked eye, of course, but not with your iris cam.
The hardware in Mulch's eye flickered and sparked.
Ow! Sorry. Small charge. You could have warned me. I'll give you a big kiss later, you baby. I thought dwarfs were tough. We are tough. I'll show you just how tough when I get back.
Root's voice interrupted the posturing.
You won't be showing anyone anything, convict. Except perhaps where the toilet is in your cell. Now, what do you see?
Mulch looked at the room again through his ion-sensitive eye. Each camera was emitting a faint beam, like the last evening's sun rays. The rays pulled on a portrait of Artemis Fowl Sr.
Not behind the picture. Oh, please.
Mulch placed his ear against the picture glass. Nothing electrical. Not alarmed then. Just to be sure, he sniffed the frame's edge. No plastic or copper. Wood, steel, and glass. Some lead in the paint. He curled a nail behind the frame and pulled. The picture came away smoothly, hinged on the side. And behind it, a safe.
It's a safe, said Foley. I know that, you idiot. I'm trying to concentrate here. If you want to help, tell me the combination. No problem. Oh, by the way, there's another little shock coming. Maybe the big baby would like to suck his thumb for comfort. Foley, I'm going to... Ow! There. That's the X-ray on.
Mulch squinted at the safe. It was incredible. He could see right into the works. Tumblers and catches stood out in shadowy relief. He blew on his hairy fingers and twisted the combination dial. In seconds, the safe lay open before him.
Oh,
he said, disappointed.
What is it? Nothing. Just human currency. Nothing of value.
Leave it, ordered Root. Try another room. Get going.
Mulch nodded. Another room. Before his time ran out. But something was niggling at him. If this guy was so clever, why did he put the safe behind a painting? Such a cliché. Totally against form. No, something wasn't right here. They were being duped somehow. Mulch closed the safe, swinging the portrait back into position. It swung smoothly, weightless on the hinges. Weightless. He swung the picture out again, and back in.
Convict! What are you doing? Shut up, Julius. Quiet a moment, Commander.
Mulch squinted at the frame's profile. A bit thicker than normal. Quite a bit thicker, even taking the box frame into account. 2 inches. He ran a nail down the heavy cartridge backing and stripped it away to reveal
another safe.
A smaller one. Custom made, obviously.
Foley, I can't see through this. Lead-lined. You're on your own, burglar boy. Do what you do best. Typical,
muttered Mulch, flattening his ear to the cold steel. He twirled the dial experimentally. Nice action. The clicks were muted by the lead. He would have to concentrate. The upside was that something this thin could only have 3 tumblers at the most. Mulch held his breath and twisted the dial, 1 cog at a time. To the normal ear, even with amplification, the clicks would have seemed uniform. But to Mulch, each cog had a distinctive signature, and when a ratchet caught, it was so loud as to be deafening.
1,
he breathed.
Hurry it up, convict. Your time is running out. You interrupted me to tell me that? I can see now how you made Commander, Julius. Convict, I'm going to...
But it was no use. Mulch had removed his earpiece, slipping it into his pocket. Now he could devote his full attention to the task at hand.
2...
There was noise outside, in the hall. Someone was coming, about the size of an elephant by the sound of it. No doubt this was the man-mountain that had made mincemeat of the retrieval squad. Mulch blinked a bead of sweat from his eye. Concentrate, concentrate. The cogs clicked by, millimeter by millimeter. Nothing was catching. The floor seemed to be hopping gently, though he could be imagining it. Click, click. Come on, come on. His fingers were slick with perspiration, the dial slipping between them. Mulch wiped them on his jerkin.
Now, baby, come on. Talk to me.
Click. Thunk.
Yes!
Mulch twisted the handle. Nothing. Still an obstruction. He ran a fingertip over the metal face. There. A small irregularity. A micro keyhole. Too small for your average lockpick. Time for a little trick he learned in prison. Quickly, though, his stomach was bubbling like a stew in the oven, and the footsteps were getting closer. Selecting a sturdy chin hair, Mulch fed it gently into the tiny hole. When the tip reappeared, he pulled the root from his chin. The hair immediately stiffened, retaining the shape of the lock's interior. Mulch held his breath and twisted. Smooth as the goblin's lie, the lock opened. Beautiful. At moments like these, it was almost worth all the jail time. The kleptomaniac dwarf swung back the little door. Beautiful work. Almost worthy of a fairy forge. Light as a wafer. Inside was a small chamber. And in the chamber was...
Oh, gods above,
breathed Mulch. Then things came to a head rather rapidly. The shock that Mulch had experienced communicated itself to his bowels, and they decided the excess air had to go. Mulch knew the symptoms: jelly legs, bubbling cramps, wobbly behind. In the seconds remaining to him, he snatched the object from the safe, and, leaning over, he clasped his knees for support. The constrained wind had built itself up to mini-cyclone intensity, and could not be contained. And so, it exited. Rather abrasively. Blowing open Mulch's back flap and slamming into the rather large gentleman who had been sneaking up behind him. Artemis was glued to the monitors. This was the time when things traditionally went wrong for kidnappers, the third quarter of operations. Having been successful thus far, the abductors tended to relax, light up a few cigarettes, get chatty with their hostages. Next thing they know, they were flat on their faces with a dozen guns pointed at the back of their heads. Not Artemis Fowl. He didn't make mistakes. No doubt the fairies were reviewing the tapes of their first negotiating session, searching for anything that would give them a way in. Well, it was there all right. All they had to do was look, buried just deep enough to make it look accidental. It was possible that Commander Root would try another ruse. He was a wily one, no doubt about it. One who would not take kindly to being bested by a child. He would bear watching. The mere thought of Root gave Artemis the shivers. He decided to check in again. He inspected the monitors. Juliet was still in the kitchen, scrubbing at the sink, washing the vegetables. Captain Short was on her bunk, quiet as the grave. No more bed-banging. Perhaps he had been wrong about her. Perhaps there was no plan. Butler stood at his post outside Holly's cell. Odd. He should have been on his rounds by now. Artemis grabbed a walkie-talkie.
Butler? Roger base. Receiving. Shouldn't you be on your rounds?
There was a pause.
I am, Artemis. Patrolling the main landing. Coming up on the safe room. I'm waving at you right now.
Artemis glanced at the landing cameras. Deserted. From every angle. Definitely no waving manservant. He studied the monitors, counting under his breath. There. Every 10 seconds, a slight jump. On every screen.
A loop!
He cried, jumping from his chair.
They're feeding us a loop!
Over the speaker, he could hear Butler's pace quickening to a run.
The safe room!
Artemis's stomach dropped into queasy hell.
Duped!
He, Artemis Fowl, had been duped, even though he'd known it was coming. Inconceivable. It was arrogance that had done it. His own blinding arrogance, and now the entire plan could collapse around his ears. He switched the walkie-talkie to Juliet's band. It was a pity now that he'd taken the house's intercom offline, but it didn't operate on a secure frequency.
Juliet.
Receiving.
Where are you right now?
In the kitchen, wrecking my nails on this grater.
Leave it, Juliet. Check on the prisoner.
But Artemis, the carrot sticks will dry out.
Leave it, Juliet,
shouted Artemis.
Drop everything and check on the prisoner.
Juliet obediently dropped everything, including the walkie-talkie. She'd sulk for days now. Never mind. There was no time to worry about a teenage girl's bruised ego. He had more important matters to tend to. Artemis depressed the master switch on the computerized surveillance system. His only chance of purging the loop was a complete reboot. After several agonizing moments of screen snow, the monitors jumped and settled. Things were not as they had seemed only seconds before. There was a grotesque thing in the safe room. It apparently discovered the secret compartment. Not only that, but it had managed to open the whisper lock. Amazing. Butler had it covered, though. He was sneaking up behind the creature, and any moment now the intruder would find itself nose down in the carpet. Artemis switched his attention to Holly. The elf was back to bed banging, slamming the frame down over and over again as though she could... It hit Artemis then, like a blast from a water cannon. If Holly had somehow smuggled an acorn in here, then 1 square centimeter of ground would be enough. If Juliet left that door open...
Juliet!
He shouted into the walkie-talkie.
Juliet, don't go in there!
That was the wrong accent.
Juliet, don't go in there!
But it was useless. The girl's walkie-talkie lay buzzing on the kitchen floor, and Artemis could only watch helplessly as Butler's sister strode toward the self door, muttering about carrots.
The safe room!
Exclaimed Butler, quickening his pace. His instinct was to go in all guns blazing, but training took over. Fairy hardware was most definitely superior to his own, and who knew how many barrels were aimed at the other side of that door right now? No. Caution was most definitely the best part of valor in this particular situation. He placed a palm against the wood, feeling for vibration. Nothing. No machinery, then. Butler curled his fingers around the knob, twisting gently. With his other hand, he drew a Sig Sauer automatic from his shoulder holster. No time to fetch the dart rifle. He would have to shoot to kill. The door swung open noiselessly, as Butler knew it would, having oiled every hinge in the house himself. Before him was... well, To be honest, Butler wasn't quite sure what it was. If he didn't know better, that is, at first glance, he could have sworn that the thing resembled nothing more than an enormous quivering... Suddenly the thing exploded, jettisoning an amazing amount of tunnel waste directly at the unfortunate manservant. It was like being battered with 100 sledgehammers simultaneously. Butler was lifted bodily and flung against the wall. And as he lay there, consciousness slipping away from him, he prayed that Master Artemis hadn't managed to capture the moment on video. Holly was weakening. The bed frame was nearly twice her body weight, and the ridges were tearing cruel welts in her palms. But she couldn't stop now. Not when she was so close. She slammed the post into the concrete again. A cloud of grey dust spiraled around her legs. Any second now, Fowl would tumble to her plan, and she'd get the hypodermic treatment again. But until then... She gritted her teeth against the pain, heaving the bed frame to knee height. Then she saw it. A sliver of brown among the grey. Could it be true? Pain forgotten, Captain Short dropped the bed, sinking quickly to her knees. There was indeed a small patch of earth poking through the cement. Holly fumbled the acorn from her boot, clasping it tightly in bloody fingers. "I return you to Earth," she whispered, worming her fist into the tiny space, "and claim the gift that is my right." Random Mike, thank you for the host. I appreciate that support and you sharing me with your followers and viewers. How you doing tonight, Mike? Nothing happened for a heartbeat. Perhaps two. Then, Holly felt the magic rush up her arm like a jolt from an electrified troll fence. The shock sent her spinning across the room. For a moment, the world swirled in a disconcerting kaleidoscope of color, but when it settled, Holly was no longer the defeated elf she had been. "Right, Master Fowl?" She grinned, watching the blue sparks of fairy magic seal her wounds. "Let's see what I have to do to get your permission to leave this place." Good. About to start up some more Creativerse. I don't think I've seen Creativerse in my Ankh-bot when I type in creative or whatever. It's listed as an option. But I don't know what that is. Is it what kind of stuff is done in that game? "Drop everything," sulked Juliet. "Drop everything and check the prisoner." She flicked blonde tresses expertly over her shoulder. "He must think I'm his maid or something." She hammered on the cell door with the flat of her hand. "It's similar to Minecraft? Oh, okay." "I'm coming in now, fairy girl, so if you're doing anything embarrassing, please stop." In concept, but it is its own things. Oh, okay, I might look into that. Juliet punched the combination into the keypad. "And no, I don't have your vegetables or your washed fruit, but it's not my fault. Artemis insisted that I come right down." Juliet stopped talking because there was nobody listening. She was preaching to an empty room. She waited for her brain to pass out an explanation. Nothing came. Eventually, the notion to take another look filtered down. She took a tentative step into the concrete cube. Nothing. Only a slight shimmering in the shadows. Like a mist. It was probably these stupid glasses. How are you supposed to see anything wearing mirrored sunglasses underground? And they were so 90s. They weren't even retro yet. Juliet glanced guiltily at the monitor. Just a quick peek. What harm could it do? She whipped up the frames, sending her eyeballs spinning around the room. In that instant, a figure materialized before her. Just stepped out of the air. It was Holly. She was smiling. "Oh, it's you. How did you..." The fairy interrupted her with a wave of her hand. Why don't you just take off those glasses, Juliet? They really don't suit you. She's right, thought Juliet. And what a lovely voice. Like a choir all on its own. How could you argue with a voice like that? Sure, caveman glasses off. Cool voice, by the way. Do-re-mi and all that. Holly decided not to try deciphering Juliet's comments. It was hard enough when the girl was in full control of her brain. Hello, Black Knight Devil. How are you tonight? Now, a simple question. No problem. What a great idea. How many people are in the house? Juliet thought. One, and one, and one. And another one? No, Mrs. Fowl wasn't there. 3, she said finally. Me and Butler, and of course Artemis. Mrs. Fowl was here, but she went bye-bye. Then she went bye-bye. Juliet giggled. She'd made a joke. And a good one, too. I'm doing pretty well, Black Knight. Holly drew a breath to ask for clarification, then thought better of it. A mistake, as it turned out. Has anyone else been here? Anyone like me? Juliet chewed her lip. There was one little man in a uniform like yours. Not cute, though. Not one bit. Just shouted and smoked a smelly cigar. Terrible complexion. Red as a tomato. Holly almost smiled. Root had come himself. No doubt the negotiations had been disastrous. No one else. Not that I know of. If you see that man again, tell him to lay off the red meat. He's just a coronary waiting to happen. Holly swallowed a grin. Juliet was the only human she knew who was probably more lucid under the mesmer. Okay, I'll tell him. Now, Juliet, I want you to stay in my room, and no matter what you hear, don't come out. Juliet frowned. This room, it's so boring. No TV or anything. Can I just go up to the lounge? No, you have to stay here. Anyway, they've just installed a wall television. Cinema size. Wrestling 24 hours a day. Juliet almost fainted with pleasure. She ran into the cell, gasping as her imagination supplied the pictures. Holly shook her head. Well, she thought, at least one of us is happy. Mulch gave his rear end a shake to dislodge any clumps of earth. If only his mother could see him now, spraying mud on the mud people. That was irony. Or something like it. Mulch had never been big on vocabulary in school. That or poetry. He'd never seen the point. Down the mines, there were only 2 phrases of any importance. Look, gold, and cave in, everybody out. No hidden meanings there. Or rhymes. The dwarf buttoned his back flap, which had been blasted open by the gale emitting from his nether regions. Time to make a run for it. Whatever hope he'd had of escaping undiscovered had been blown. Literally. Mulch retrieved his earpiece, screwing it firmly into his ear. Well, you never knew. Even the LEP might prove useful.
And when I get my hands on you, convict, you'll wish you stayed down those mines.
Mulch sighed. Oh well, nothing new there then. Clasping the safe's treasure tightly in his fist, the dwarf returned to retrace his steps. To his utter amazement, there was a human entangled in the banisters. Mulch was not one bit surprised that his recyclings had managed to hurl the elephantine mudman several yards through the air. Dwarf gas had been known to cause avalanches in the Alps. What did surprise him was the fact that the man had managed to get so close to him in the first place.
You're good,
said Mulch, wagging a finger at the unconscious bodyguard.
But nobody takes a body blow from Mulch Diggums and stays on their feet.
The mudman stirred, the whites of his eyes showing beneath fluttering lids. Root's voice crackled in the dwarf's ears.
Get a move on, Mulch Diggums, before the mudman gets up and rearranges your innards. He took out an entire retrieval team, you know.
Mulch swallowed, his bravado suddenly deserting him.
An entire retrieval team? Maybe I should get back underground, for the good of the mission.
Skipping hurriedly around the groaning bodyguard, Mulch took the steps 2 at a time. No point in worrying about creaking stairs when you've just sent the intestinal equivalent of Hurricane Hal scurrying around the corridors. He'd almost reached the cellar door when a figure shimmered into focus before him. Mulch recognized it as his arresting officer from the Renaissance Master's smuggling case.
Captain Short.
Mulch, I wasn't expecting to see you. The dwarf shrugged.
Julius had a dirty job. Someone had to do it.
I get it. Holly nodded. You've already lost your magic. Smart. What did you find out? Mulch showed Holly his find.
This was in his safe.
A copy of the book, gasped Holly. No wonder we're in this fix. We were playing into his hands all along. Mulch opened the cellar door.
Shall we?
I can't. I'm under eyeball orders not to leave this house.
You magical types and your rituals. You have no idea how liberating it is to be rid of all that mumbo-jumbo.
A series of sharp noises drifted down from the upper landing. It sounded like a troll threshing around in a crystal emporium.
We
can debate ethics at a later date. Right now, I suggest we make ourselves scarce. Mulch nodded.
Agreed. This guy took out an entire retrieval squad, apparently.
Holly paused, half-shrouded. An entire squad? Fully equipped. I wonder... She continued her fade out, and the last thing to go was her widening grin. I just read that. Mulch was tempted to hang around. There weren't many things more fun to watch than a heavily armed recon officer going to town on a bunch of unsuspecting humans. By the time Captain Short got through with this Fowl character, he'd be begging her to get out of his manor. The Fowl character in question was watching it all from the surveillance room. There was no denying it. Things were not good. Not good at all. But certainly not irredeemable. There was still hope. Artemis catalogued the events of the last few minutes. The manor's security had been compromised. The safe room was in a shambles, blown apart by some sort of fairy flatulence. Butler lay unconscious, probably paralyzed by the same gaseous anomaly. His hostage was loose in the house, her fairy powers restored to her. There was an unsightly creature in leather pants burrowing holes beneath the foundations with no apparent regard for the fairy commandments. And the people had retrieved a copy of the book. One of several copies, as it happened, including one on disc in a Swiss vault. Artemis's finger combed an errant strand of dark hair. He would have to dig very deep to uncover the good in this particular scenario. He took several deep breaths, finding his chi, as Butler had taught him. After several moments' contemplation, he realized that these factors meant little to the overall strategies of both sides. Captain Short was still trapped in the manor, and the time stoppage period was running out. Soon, the LEP would have no option but to launch their biobomb, and that was when Artemis Fowl would unveil his coup de grace. Of course, the whole thing depended on Commander Root. If Root was as intellectually challenged as he looked, it was quite possible the entire scheme would collapse around his ears. Artemis hoped fervently that someone on the fairy team had the wit to spot the blunder he'd made during the negotiation session. Mulch unbuttoned his back flap. Time to suck some dirt, as they said down in the mines. The trouble with dwarf tunnels is that they were self-sealing, so that if you had to go back the way you came, there was a whole new burrow to be excavated. Some dwarfs retraced their steps exactly, chewing through the less compact and predigested dirt. Mulch preferred to dig a fresh tunnel. For some reason, eating the same dirt twice didn't appeal to him. Unhinging his jaw, the dwarf pointed himself torpedo-like through the hole in the floorboards. His heart calmed immediately as the scent of minerals filled his nostrils. Safe. He was safe. Nothing could catch a dwarf underground, not even a Skylian rockworm. That was, of course, if he managed to get underground. 10 very powerful fingers gripped Mulch by the ankles. This just wasn't the dwarf's day. First Wartface, now this homicidal human. Some people never learn. Usually mud people. "Our girl," he mumbled, unhinged jaw flapping uselessly.
"Not a chance," came the reply. "The only way you're leaving this house is in a body bag."
Mulch could feel himself being dragged backward. This human was strong. There weren't many creatures that could dislodge a dwarf with a grip on something. He scrabbled in the dirt, cramming handfuls of wine-impregnated clay into his cavernous mouth. There was only one chance.
"Come on, you little goblin. Out of there."
Goblin?
Mulch would have been indignant had he not been busy chewing clay to eject at his enemy. The human stopped talking. Possibly he had noticed the flap, and probably what was behind it. No doubt what had happened in the safe room was coming back to him. Oh. What would have followed the "oh" is anyone's guess, but I'd be willing to bet that it wouldn't have been "dearie me." As it happened, Butler never had time to finish his expletive because he wisely chose the moment to relinquish his grip. A wise choice indeed, because it coincided with the instant Mulch decided to launch his earthen offensive. A clump of compacted clay sped like a cannon directly at the spot where Butler's head had been barely a second previously. Had it still occupied that space, the impact would have separated it from Butler's shoulders. An ignoble end for a bodyguard of his caliber. As it was, the soggy missile barely grazed his ear. Nevertheless, the force was sufficient to spin Butler like an ice skater, landing him on his rump for the second time in as many minutes. By the time his vision had settled, the dwarf had disappeared into a maelstrom of churning muck. Butler decided not to attempt pursuit. Dying below ground was not very high on his things-to-do list. But there will be another day, Fairy, he thought grimly. And there was to be. But that's another story. Mulch's momentum propelled him underground. He'd gone several yards along the loamy vein before he realized no one was following. Once the taste of earth had settled his heart rate, he decided it was time to implement his escape plan. The dwarf altered his course, chewing his way toward the rabbit warren he'd noticed earlier. With any luck, the centaur hadn't run a seismology test on the manor grounds, or his ruse might be discovered. He'd just have to bank on the fact they had more important things to worry about than a missing prisoner. There shouldn't be any problem deceiving Julius, but the centaur, he was a smart one. Mulch's internal compass steered him true, and within minutes he could feel the gentle vibrations of the rabbits, loping along their tunnels. From here on, timing was crucial if the illusion was to be effective. He slowed his digging rate, poking the soft clay gently until his fingers reached the tunnel wall. Mulch was careful to look the other way because whatever he saw would be showing up on the view screens back in LEP HQ. Laying his fingers on the tunnel floor like an upturned spider, Mulch waited. It didn't take long. In seconds, he felt the rhythmic thump of an approaching rabbit. The instant the animal's hind leg brushed the trap, he tightened his powerful digits around its neck. The poor animal never had a chance. "Sorry, friend," thought the dwarf. "If there was any other way." Pulling the rabbit's body through the hole, Mulch rehinged his jaw and began screaming,
Cave in! Cave in! Help! Help!
Now for the tricky bit. With one hand, he agitated the surrounding earth, bringing showers of it crumbling around his own head. With the other hand, he popped the iris cam out of his left eye and slid it into the rabbit's. Given the almost total darkness and the landfill confusion, it should be almost impossible to spot the switch.
Julius, please, help me!
"Mulch, what's happening? What's your status?"
"What's my status?" thought the dwarf incredulously. Even in times of supposed crisis, the commander couldn't abandon his precious protocol. The dwarf dragged his final scream out, petering off to a gurgling rattle. A bit melodramatic, perhaps, but Mulch never could resist the theatrics. With a last regretful glance at the dying animal, he unhinged his jaw and finned off to the southeast. Freedom beckoned. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 7. We will read chapters 8. I think there's only 9 chapters in this book. Yeah, we'll read chapters 8, 9, and the epilogue next week. And then, depending on how long that takes, we may even start on the next book. Who knows? Oh, just hit myself in the face with the pop filter. Grand. So that's it for the reading tonight. Hello, Mr. Rockfish. And it is 4 a.m., so I probably won't stay up too much longer. Hello, Strange Senpai. But, let's see. Hey, Lunar, what's up? You're in right at the end, BB. But I will be streaming tomorrow / later today, however you want to interpret it. Thursday night. I'm sorry, Lunar. I'm so sorry. I will be streaming. It will not start at 9:30 Central. I can tell you that for sure. I'm going to see the Laser Team movie in theaters, and I don't think it gets done till about 9:15. So, I assume it'll probably be sometime around 10:30 or 11 Central Time, with needing setup and everything. Keep an eye on my Twitter. If you would like to, oh goodness. Build broadcast! Thank you for the host. I appreciate the support, and you sharing me with your followers and viewers, even though I'm ending now. Oh goodness. Why did I, oh okay. But yeah, so, words. Follow me on Twitter. It's @DorkyRay, listed right there. Dorky_Ray. I will keep Twitter going pretty well. Hey, Lauren, how are you? I am checking to see if there's. I don't generally raid on Comfy Corner nights, just because, like, the relaxation of the book jumping to video games, but I might see if there are any creative streamers that look like they could use a raid. Okay. I forgot that the creative. Oh god, I forgot the creative had the thing that it autoplays, whatever. Okay, so I don't know much about this. Am I following this person? I might actually be following this person. I didn't notice it earlier. I am. So I don't know too terribly much about this particular streamer, other than Rainy is definitely a big fan. For some reason I woke up at 0:25. I finished through chapter 7, so there's chapter 8, chapter 9, and the epilogue left. So actually, if you guys... Oh, hey, it just popped up right there. If you guys want to vote on the book that we read next, definitely be interested. I may even end up moving on to it next week, depending on how long those couple chapters last me. And you can vote for multiple if you would like. I think I have it set to that. For a while there, Artemis Fowl, the Arctic incident was at 100%. Now it's 67%. Golden Compass and Arctic incident are currently have the votes. Artemis Fowl, the Arctic incident, so continuing on with the series, is currently in the lead still. Thank you, Lunar. It's literally, I didn't wash it in the shower today because I was lazy and I didn't feel like blow drying it, so it's just how it decided to fall. But yeah, so we are going to go on a raid. But first, if you guys want to hang out in outside of stream, we do have a Discord server where you can chit chat with us. It's a pretty fun, if you're not familiar with Discord, it's a pretty fun chat program. You're able to have separate channels within your server and voice chat and all that sort of thing. It's pretty awesome. And then, but I gotta whisper. Fair enough, Build, fair enough. I generally wash my hair, if not every day, every other day, partially because I work in a kitchen and my everything, hair, clothes, skin, literally everything ends up smelling like chicken after only 5 hours at work. But it's really short, so I don't have to worry about tangling. Anyway. So yeah, there's the Discord. Then we've got, if you want to follow me on social media, those are my social media links. Go ahead and give me a follow. My Tumblr is not very active. YouTube, these videos, my Comfy Corner streams, get uploaded to YouTube every week. So if you miss part of the book, or if you're behind, or if you want to hear the entirety of the book, those are uploaded up onto the YouTube for your listening pleasure. And then I'm part of an unofficial team here on Twitch known as the Optimistically Delightful Dorky Streamers, or Odd Streamers. You should absolutely follow the rest of the members, Todd, Storms, Rainy, Boo, and Connor. They're all super wonderful, fantastic people. Great streamers, lots of fun to watch. And you should absolutely check those people out. And there might be some things coming with that, possibly. Next week, next Friday, we're going to have an odd team multicast. Don't know what we'll be playing yet, but it's going to be all 6 of us just hanging out and having a good time. Probably being really bad at video games. So look forward to that. I'm kind of hoping that we'll start doing some more things as well. Possibly, I'm thinking about the possibility of like a podcast or something. Just that sort of thing. I'll probably talk about that in the Discord if you guys end up joining that. We are going on a raid tonight, and if you guys have not been on a raid with us before, the way it works, I'm going to post a link in the chat, and you go click the link, go into their stream, sit nice and quiet until you see me post hashtag #DorkyRaid, and that's RAED, along with a couple Twitch raid pictures, and then you reply with hashtag #DorkyRaid. It's just a way to introduce you to new streamers, introduce them to some new viewers. It's a lot of fun. We're going to be raiding Toki Yuha tonight. She's a friend of Rainy's. I've been in her chat a couple times. I don't know her super well, but she's doing creative tonight, so should fit in nicely. I will see you guys all over there, and then like I said, tomorrow I am streaming probably around 10:30 p.m. Central Time, and that's going to be some Mass Effect 3. So look forward to that. I'll probably also be like really hyped about Laser Team and meeting people that are into Rooster Teeth that live in the area. I'm going to be really happy tomorrow. I can almost guarantee it. So look forward to that. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for coming out. You could have chosen to be anywhere tonight. You chose to spend your time with me, and I super appreciate that. Love every single one of you. Can't wait to see you next time. Have a great night, day, or whatever it may be for you guys. See you over in Toki's chat. Bye-bye!